everybody. Do you remember the story all about BB, the human gas balloon? I'll bet you do. And BB was a very special kid because it seemed like he was like everybody else, except if he ate too many beans, the gas would get so much in his belly that he would begin to float up in the air. And it happened at his house one time where he floated to the ceiling. And then later it happened at his school and he floated up to the ceiling of his classroom. And remember, all of the students were so amazed. They thought, we've never seen anybody that could do something like this. BB is a human gas balloon. He's a very special kid. And also remember, before this happened to BB, he had never experienced burping or pooting before. He didn't know how to do that. But when he ate a lot of beans at school and floated up to the ceiling in his room there at the school, then he pooted and he came back down. Well, would you like to know what's going to happen in the second part of the story of BB, the human gas balloon? All right, this is part 2, and we're going to tell what happens to BB next. Well, you can imagine, of course, all the students at the school thought this was the most amazing thing they had ever heard of before, and nobody knew about a kid that could eat beans and float up in the air, so BB was the first one. And of course, all of the students were excited and wanted to find out more about it. So BB's friends decided, hey, BB, let's do an experiment and see how many beans you can eat and how much you can fly up in the air. Well, they decided that all of the students would invite BB to come to their house, and their mommies would make beans at their kitchens, and BB would go and eat beans at all of the different students' houses. And at each house, he couldn't eat too much because he would be so full, but he would just eat a little bit. And then he'd go to the next house and eat a little bit, and go to the next house and eat a little bit. But by the time it was done, BB was so full of beans, he said, oh, my tummy feels too full. And all of his friends from school said, don't worry, BB, because pretty soon something amazing is going to happen. We can't wait to see it. Well, sure enough, you know what happened? The gas in BB's stomach began to get bigger and bigger and more, and suddenly he started floating up in the air. And BB said, wait a minute, now we're outside in the yard and there's no ceiling. How high will I fly? So his friends grabbed his legs and they hung on to him, and they began to walk around the neighborhood like they had a human balloon. And someone said, hey, let's tie a rope to BB's leg and we'll let him float up in the air like a helium balloon. And BB said, yeah, that'll be fun. So one of the students found a rope and they tied it around BB's leg, and then they let him go higher and higher and higher, but not too high because they held onto the rope. And a lot of the students held onto the rope together because they didn't want to let BB go. Who knows? If the rope had broken or if they had let go, BB might have floated into space. But this day they were hanging on to the rope, and so they were walking around the neighborhood, and when they went around the corner, they heard a little girl crying. Oh, she was so sad. What happened, little girl? She said, my kitty cat went up in the tree, and my kitty cat won't come down, and my kitty cat doesn't know how to come down out of the tree. What are we going to do? And all the students looked up in the tree, and sure enough, there was that kitty cat up there on a branch. And so one of the students said, hey, BB, you could get that kitty cat down. And so they walked over to the tree holding the rope, and BB went closer and closer to the tree. And finally, they got BB right up near that branch where the kitty cat was at. He floated right over there. And BB said, "Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Here, kitty, 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 kitty." And he reached over and he petted the kitty that was up on that branch. And then he picked the kitty up and held him tight and gave him a big hug. And then the students down below pulled on the rope and they brought BB back down while BB was holding the kitty cat. And then BB handed the kitty cat to the little girl who had been crying. But just at that very same second, when BB handed the kitty cat to the little girl, suddenly he pooted. Oh no! And all the gas went out, and all of the students said, "Pew-wee, that's so sticky." And the little cat went meow and ran away. And the little girl ran after her cat, and BB came crashing down to the ground. He wasn't floating anymore. Well, all of the students decided this is the most amazing thing. If we could only teach BB how to control his burps or control his poots, then he could control flying in the air. And if he ate a lot of beans, he would fly up. But then if he wanted to come back down, he could just burp or he could just poot and he could come back down to the ground. So they spent a long time talking to BB and trying to teach him how to burp and how to poot. And so all of the students knew how to do that. They were all very good at it. But BB was having a hard time learning how. But he said, "I'm going to try my best." And the student said, "And by the way, BB, those poots really stink. Pew-wee. So why don't you learn to burp instead? That might not stink so bad." So BB said, "Okay, I'll try." So he practiced and he practiced, and finally he learned how to burp a little bit. It wouldn't be a big one, just a little one like, Or some of his friends would come along and say, "No, BB, that's not the way to do it. Do it like this." Wah! A big burp is what you need. But BB was learning and he was getting better. In fact, as they practiced more and more, he would eat some beans and float up in the air, and then he would burp a little bit, and then he would come back down again, and then he'd eat some more beans and float up in the air, and then he would burp, and then he would come back down again. And so all of the students and BB were having a wonderful time learning all about how he could do his best flying up and down. Until one day they were all at school, and suddenly the principal came into the school and he said, "Students, this is an emergency. Something terrible has happened. Oh no, what are we going to do?" And the students said, "What happened? Tell us." And the principal of the school said, "Today some workers came to the school and they were going to paint the chimney on the top of the school. It's way up high. It's more than 2 stories high. It's more than 3 stories high." And they were up there with their ladders and their paintbrushes, and they're painting the chimney of the school. But the ladder they were standing on broke. Now one of the workers is up there hanging from the chimney, and he doesn't have a way to get down. And if we don't help him, very soon he might fall and break his neck. What are we going to do? We've called the fire department, and they are so far away they can't get here soon enough to come and help him. And all the students looked at BB, and they said, "Come on, BB, this is your chance to save the day. Remember how you saved that little kitty cat that day? Remember how you floated to the top of the classroom? Today is the day that BB's going to save that painter up on the school chimney." But first, what did they have to do so that BB could float up in the air? That's right. he had to eat a lot of beans. So the ladies from the school cafeteria came on the run with bowls and bowls of beans. And they said, "Baby, you better eat a lot because that man on the chimney hanging up there, he might be very, very heavy." So Bibi started eating the beans, eating and eating. And he said, "These are pretty good. I like these beans." And he ate some more and he ate some more. And pretty soon his belly started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was so big, he started floating up in the air. And all of the class students and the teachers and the principal said, "Quick, tie a rope to Bibi's leg." And so they did. And they all went outside so they could see the chimney where that man was hanging on for dear life. And so they let the rope up a little higher, and Bibi went floating up 1 story. Bibi went floating up 2 stories. Bibi went floating up 3 stories, all the way up to the chimney at the top of the school. And when he got up there, they drug the rope over where he'd be next to the man who was hanging from the chimney. And Bibi said, "I'm here to help you, sir." And the man was so terrified and so surprised. He had never seen a flying boy before. And he said, "Well, how are you flying?" And Bibi said, "Don't worry about that right now. I'm here to help you get down." And so Bibi got closer to where the man was, and the man grabbed onto Bibi. He was so afraid. And you know what? You would think that Bibi might be floating down to the ground now, right? Because that big, heavy man hanging on to him? No. Bibi was so full of gas, he kept floating up. And he kept floating higher and higher. And the principal was hanging onto the rope. And the teacher was hanging onto the rope. And all the students were hanging onto the rope down below. But Bibi was going higher. And the man that was on the chimney was going higher. And then everybody hanging onto the rope started going up in the air too. And they were hanging on, going up and up and up. And before you knew it, everybody hanging onto the rope and Bibi and the man who had been on the chimney, they were all flying up into the air, higher and higher. And the principal and the teacher and all the students said, "We don't think we can hang on much longer. Oh no." And before you knew it, they were up above the roof of the school. After that, they were up above the treetops. After that, they got higher than the mountains. They were up in the sky so high. And all of the students said, "Bibi, you've got to poot or you've got to burp because we've got to come down. This is terrifying. What are we going to do?" And the teachers and the principal and the students said, "We can't hang on much longer, Bibi." And Bibi said, "I'm trying. I'm trying to burp as hard as I can, but I can't do it." And all of a sudden, they heard a noise. It sounded like a whooshing sound of a giant engine. And they looked, and here comes a big airplane flying right at them. And it's going to crash into Bibi, and it's going to tear up the rope, and everybody's going to fall. Oh, no. And as the plane started getting closer and closer, Bibi was so afraid, all of a sudden, he did the biggest poot you ever heard in your whole life. And all of the students and the man hanging from the chimney before and the principal and the teacher, they all said, "Pew-wee! Baby, that's the stinkiest poot we ever smelled." But they started coming down because the gas had gone out of Bibi's stomach. And slowly, 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 they came down, 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 down. And they floated all the way back down to the school. And everyone was safe. And they were okay. And after that day, you know what Bibi decided to do? Bibi had a good idea. And he said, "You know what? I'm never going to eat any beans ever again." And that's the story of Bibi, the human gas balloon.